Backrooms, The Rise of Kane Parsons, Analog Horror, and the YouTube movie that changed Hollywood. Backrooms has become one of the defining entertainment stories of 2026. More than just a massive box office success, it proved that YouTube creators can transition into mainstream filmmaking without sacrificing their creative identity. Directed by 20-year-old Kane Parsons, the film has become a cultural phenomenon, generating memes, online discussion, and critical acclaim while establishing itself as one of the year's biggest horror hits. But how did Backrooms evolve from an obscure internet horror concept into one of the most talked-about movies of the decade? Today we're exploring the complete story behind the phenomenon. We'll look at the origins of the Backrooms myth, how Kane Parsons transformed an internet legend into a cinematic universe, how his viral YouTube series caught Hollywood's attention, who almost starred in the film, how the groundbreaking visuals were created, and what happened after the movie's enormous success led to unexpected tensions between Parsons and A24. Let's knocklip into the Backrooms. Sponsored content. The Backrooms didn't begin with Kane Parsons. Before diving into Kane Parsons' story, it's worth making an interesting comparison. In 1951, Distant Drums featured a brief scene where an alligator drags a soldier underwater. During the attack, the character lets out an unforgettable scream. At the time, almost nobody noticed it. 2 years later, the exact same sound effect appeared again in The Charge at Feather River. This time it accompanied a character named Private Wilhelm, giving birth to what we now know as the Wilhelm scream. The scream itself was recorded by musician Sheb Wooley, best known for singing Purple People Eater, and archived by Warner Brothers under the wonderfully descriptive label, Man Getting Bit by an Alligator and Screams. Over the following decades, it became one of Hollywood's most recognizable sound effects, appearing in hundreds of films before eventually becoming a joke in its own right. Kane Parsons occupies a similar place in internet horror history. He didn't invent the Backrooms. He made them famous. That distinction is important because it doesn't diminish his accomplishment. If anything, it highlights it. Like the Wilhelm scream, the Backrooms existed before they exploded into popular culture. Parsons simply became the creator who transformed a niche internet concept into a worldwide phenomenon. The origins of the Backrooms. Long before Backrooms dominated theaters, it was part of another internet phenomenon, Creepypasta. The term Creepypasta emerged during the mid-2000s as an evolution of copypasta, blocks of text copied and pasted repeatedly across message boards and forums. As horror stories became increasingly popular online, the term naturally evolved into creepypasta. Even if you don't recognize the name, you've almost certainly encountered the genre. Slender Man is one of the best-known examples, growing from an internet post into a multimedia horror franchise. Another famous example is Candle Cove, which eventually inspired the outstanding first season of Channel Zero. The Backrooms followed a similar path. Like many internet legends, its exact origin remains surprisingly difficult to pin down. The original Backrooms image. One mystery has finally been solved. In 2024, internet researchers discovered that the famous yellow Backrooms photograph was taken in 2002, during the transition of a furniture store in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. That discovery even inspired an Easter egg in the film through Captain Clark's furniture store. The identity of the original uploader, however, remains unknown. Many articles, including Wikipedia, credit an anonymous 4chan post from 2019 as the image's debut. But archived versions suggest the photograph was circulating online at least as early as 2018, while many internet users insist they encountered it years before that. That uncertainty has only strengthened the Backrooms myth. Like many legendary creepypastas, its mysterious origins have become part of its appeal. What is firmly documented is the text that accompanied the image on May 13, 2019. If you're not careful and you knocklip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the Backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. Those two paragraphs transformed an unsettling photograph into one of the internet's greatest collaborative horror stories. What is a liminal space? To understand why the Backrooms resonated so strongly, you first have to understand liminal spaces. A liminal space is an environment designed for transition rather than permanence. Think about places like hotel hallways, office buildings, empty schools, airports, shopping malls, subway stations. These are places meant to be filled with people and constant movement. Now imagine them completely empty. Stretch them into infinity. Remove every exit. That's where the horror begins. The Backrooms amplify this idea by trapping people inside an endless maze of identical yellow rooms illuminated by buzzing fluorescent lights. The familiar becomes deeply unsettling simply because it exists without the people who normally give it purpose. The concept itself comes from the anthropological idea of liminality, referring to periods of transition, uncertainty, or disorientation. Internet horror embraced the idea and expanded it into an entire subgenre, with the Backrooms becoming its most famous example. By the time Kane Parsons entered the picture, the Backrooms already had a devoted online following. He was about to change everything. Kane Parsons before Backrooms. Before becoming one of Hollywood's youngest blockbuster directors, Kane Parsons was simply a teenager uploading videos to YouTube under the name Kane Pixels. His earliest available upload, Sandwich, appeared on October 22, 2017. It was only 27 seconds long. Today, that humble beginning has been viewed more than 1.5 million times, while Parsons' channel has grown to over 3.5 million subscribers. In those early years, he experimented with visual effects and created several popular Attack on Titan videos, gradually teaching himself increasingly sophisticated digital filmmaking techniques. Everything changed on January 7, 2022. That's when he uploaded the Backrooms, found footage. Using Blender, Parsons created a short film unlike anything viewers had seen before. Its realistic environments, convincing camera work, and overwhelming sense of dread immediately captivated audiences. As of this writing, the video has surpassed 91 million views, launching one of YouTube's greatest horror success stories. I still remember watching it on my apartment couch shortly after it went viral. It genuinely unnerved me in a way very few online horror projects ever had. Hollywood noticed too. Unlike many viral creators eager to leave YouTube behind, Parsons remained focused on making the content he loved. Even as studios began calling, he continued expanding his channel with ambitious projects, including the outstanding analog horror series The Oldest View. The Backrooms may have made him famous, but it wasn't the end of his creative journey. It was only the beginning. Kane Parsons built an entire universe. The original The Backrooms, found footage, is remarkably simple, and that's exactly why it works. The short opens with a group of young people making a home movie, a fitting choice considering YouTube has effectively become this generation's home video camera. During filming, one of them suddenly knocklips out of reality and falls into the endless maze known as the Backrooms. What follows is almost entirely visual storytelling. The unnamed protagonist wanders through an impossible labyrinth of yellow hallways, buzzing fluorescent lights, and empty rooms before encountering one of the series' most terrifying creations, the bacteria. The grotesque creature stalks the victim through the maze, leading to a frantic escape attempt that ends in one of the video's most memorable moments. While the camera appears to make it back into our world, the person carrying it does not, with the footage falling hundreds of feet to the ground. It's a brilliant ending because it answers almost nothing. Instead, it leaves viewers with more questions than answers. Exactly the kind of mystery that fueled the Backrooms myth in the first place. Over the next 4 years, Parsons expanded that initial short into an interconnected saga spanning more than 23 videos and over 3 hours of content. Rather than simply repeating the same formula, he introduced new locations, expanded the mythology surrounding async, and transformed a simple creepypasta into a sprawling science fiction horror narrative. The series also became one of the defining examples of analog horror, a subgenre that presents fictional events through degraded videotapes, security footage, educational films, and found recordings. If traditional found footage horror evolved from handheld cameras, analog horror evolved from the internet itself. From YouTube to Hollywood. Interestingly, Parsons' first instinct wasn't to turn the Backrooms into a movie. He originally imagined the story as a comic book before Hollywood came calling. As studios competed for the rights, A24 ultimately won the bidding war, giving Parsons the opportunity to direct the adaptation himself at just 20 years old. That decision proved to be one of the studio's smartest moves. Parsons could have simply stretched his YouTube videos into a feature-length remake, but instead he made a far more ambitious choice. He told a completely new story. Rather than adapting the existing web series scene for scene, the film exists alongside it. Both stories share the same universe and take place during the 1990s, but the connections are intentionally minimal. Familiar elements like async and the iconic yellow rooms remain, yet the characters, narrative, and emotional focus are entirely new. It's an approach that rewards longtime fans without alienating newcomers who had never watched a single Kane Pixels video. Writing the feature film. Although the Backrooms universe originated with Kane Parsons, the feature screenplay was written by Will Sudick, with producer Robert Patino playing a major creative role behind the scenes. Patino brought years of experience from acclaimed television series such as Sons of Anarchy and Westworld, while Sudick had previously worked on Westworld and contributed to 10 episodes of the surprisingly excellent Ash vs. Evil Dead. That combination of fresh ideas and veteran storytelling experience shows throughout the finished film. The screenplay runs nearly 2 hours, and even longer in the later extended theatrical edition, but it rarely feels bloated. Every sequence either develops the characters or deepens the unsettling mythology surrounding the Backrooms. Perhaps most importantly, the writers understood what made Parsons' original videos so effective. They resisted the temptation to explain everything. The Backrooms remain mysterious because the audience experiences them exactly as the characters do, confused, frightened, and desperate to understand a world that refuses to provide clear answers. Building the creative team. Parsons wasn't making YouTube videos anymore. He was directing a major studio feature, and that required an experienced crew capable of translating his digital imagination into physical reality. He still remained heavily involved creatively, serving as an executive producer and composing roughly half of the film's score, but he also surrounded himself with collaborators who understood his vision. Among the most important were editor Greg Ing and cinematographer Jeremy Cox. Cox had already built an impressive resume, shooting more than 50 productions over the previous decade and contributing to films including Osgood Perkins' Keeper, Longlegs, and The Monkey. His cinematography perfectly balances realism with surrealism, making impossible spaces feel strangely believable. Ing was equally well suited to the material. Having edited several projects connected to Perkins, who also served as a producer on Backrooms, he understood the deliberate pacing and creeping atmosphere the film required. Together, the team expanded Parsons' visual language without losing the unsettling authenticity that made his YouTube work so effective. Casting the Backrooms. The film's relatively small cast helps keep the story grounded, even as reality begins collapsing around the characters. Leading the ensemble is Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays Clark, a financially struggling architect turned furniture store owner whose personal failures become inseparable from the horrors surrounding him. Opposite him is Renata Reinsve, continuing her remarkable run of emotionally complex performances as a compassionate therapist and aspiring author searching for meaning in an increasingly impossible situation. Interestingly, Reinsve wasn't the production's first choice. Kristin Milioti was originally set to play the female lead before leaving the project. She undoubtedly would have been excellent, but Reinsve ultimately delivers a performance that feels perfectly matched to the film's melancholy tone. Clark nearly looked very different as well. Reports suggest Michael B. Jordan was at one point considered for the role. While his star power would have elevated the film's profile even further, Ejiofor brings an understated vulnerability that better serves the character's existential journey. The supporting cast includes Lukita Maxwell as furniture store assistant